Hi everyone, my name is Sharn. My pronouns are she and her or they and them. I have a phone call from one of the staff at an EarlyON center who had some questions that they wanted to ask. They wish to not be on camera and not be identified by name, which is fine. I'm so glad that they called in. I was just in the middle of starting another tape for Circle Time or recording for Circle Time, and I thought this would be a question that all of you could benefit from hearing the answers for. Let's go ahead and start the questions. Go ahead. So what questions did you have for me today?
How do I make the environment more welcoming to the LGBTQ2S families and special BIPOC, queer, and two-spirited people?
That is a really great question, and I'm glad that you called in so that we can answer these questions. So one of the ways that you can make any environment welcoming is by having images of those individuals in the space. So the individuals that are LGBTQ and BIPOC, you having posters, having pictures, having books, toys, dolls, those sort of things in the space will of course make anyone feel at ease. Just think about your home. When you come into your home and you see the family pictures on the wall, it makes you feel comfortable and at ease. That's exactly how you should think about your space. How can you make that space feel more welcoming? Well, you simply put the people that come into the space on the wall and let them know that this is their space by doing that. Also, it's not a bad idea ever to just ask the families how you can make the space more welcoming to them. They have some amazing ideas. Name tags is a good way to start. If you have name tags, you can also have pronouns on those name tags. So you can have my name, for example, is Sharn, and you can say hello on the name tag. My name is Sharn, and the pronoun, my pronoun, preferred pronoun, or my pronoun that I want to use is she, her, or they and them. And that'll be so helpful. So everyone will be able to communicate with each other. Everyone will know each other's names, and just first names is good enough. And yes, you can do that for the children too. As we know, certain age of children will rip their name tags off, so you can put it on their back, in the middle of their back, so that they, don't rip it off. Just be sure when they're leaving the space to take off their name tags, right? And those name tags can be reused. Another way of making someone feel welcomed is by using a sign-in sheet. We all have to sign in, and a sign-in sheet that has our pronouns on it is also very helpful. So it could be preferred pronoun or not, or what pronoun does your child call you, and that could be in the adult section, and what pronouns does your child like to use can be in the children's section. And that's all so helpful, and any staff that comes into the space can then look at that form, and they can at least get familiar with names and familiar with pronouns. It's always a good idea to try your best to call people by their names. I know how welcoming I feel when somebody calls me by my name. I know my name is kind of difficult for people, so I always link it with something, Sharn, Barn kind of thing, and then people tend to remember. And maybe that's something that families will help you do by communicating with them. Another thing that you can do for families to feel more welcomed is leave them space to be a part of the program. So for example, there's special events that we celebrate in the LGBTQ community. It'd be a great idea for you to ask families what special events do they celebrate, and then have those special days celebrated in your center. For example, Pride. Pride is a very important day in the LGBTQ community, and celebrating Pride is something that you can do during the month of June, but you can also do it all year round, and you can also do it during Circle Time and during Story Time. Having books, like I said, that look and don't have stereotypical images in them of people that are in these communities, LGBT communities and BIPOC communities. BIPOC means Black, Indigenous, People of Color communities, are always a great thing to do, because these books can help to spearhead different types of programming and different types of conversations. And sometimes these are the first times that people will actually get to be with a book that is about something other than their own culture. And that's important. And yeah, so I think those are all really great starts. What do you think of those ideas so far?
They're all really great ideas.
Excellent.
It shows that people are very inclusive.
Exactly, and that's what we're all trying to do. We're trying to be more inclusive and affirming. So inclusive, we all went to school for what we're doing, or we have some sort of training in what we're doing, and we learn about including everyone, including somebody who maybe have mobility concerns, but also including people that may have visual concerns, or people who may have autism or are on the autism spectrum. So we've learned about that. So now we have to dig just a little bit deeper in terms of affirming individual gender expressions. So, and one of the ways we can do that is through pronouns, through books, through images on the wall like posters. If you go to the 519's website and go to education and training, and then go to resources, you will find that there is a section called campaign. We have campaigns that we do at the 519. One of the campaigns is Proud to Be Me. Unfortunately, I don't have a poster with me at home here to show you, but my communications team will put one up for everyone to see, so you'll know what I'm talking about. The Proud to Be Me posters are proud to be me, proud of my family, and proud of my community. These posters show different gender expressions, and it also shows an opportunity for all of us to be more affirming and inclusive in our practices. We also developed this booklet, and this booklet I'm going to get the communications team to also put available for you online, so you can see it, and let them put it in the video. It's called Best Practices Creating LGBTQ Affirming Environments, and it was created by myself and Madison, and it has self-determination as one of the headings, and it talks about practicing asking open-ending questions and listening carefully to what is being communicated to you, noticing what may be influencing your assumptions. Like, if you see a child playing with a truck, is the assumption that child has to have a male, it has to be male, or is it the assumption that the child is just enjoying the toy, and it doesn't matter, and it should not matter what gender expression that child is, or who is playing with the toy. It should just be that the child gets to enjoy all toys in the space. One of the ones that I wanted to focus on, because there's 6 or 7 in here from what I can remember. What I wanted to focus on was mirrored language. If a child says, today I'm a mermaid, and I want to be called mermaid today, and what harm is it to have that child enjoy that pronoun mermaid for the rest of the program, and then tomorrow they may come up with another pronoun for themselves. This space that we have is a space that a child should be feeling very safe, and an adult who comes into the space should also feel very safe. And there is nothing wrong with expressing your gender identity in a way that's safe and supportive of the space. So mermaid it is for the day. Maybe tomorrow will be a different one. Maybe then next week it'll be mermaid again. and singing songs. We want to be able to sing songs that are more inclusive. So thinking about, and this, the families can help you with this, think about songs that are so gendered, like she'll be coming around the mountain when she comes, right? Can we not say they'll be coming around the mountain when they come? Yes, it's a little bit more of a mental play for us, but you know, we've learned harder things. You know, and they and them are not foreign pronouns to us because we've used them in the past. For example, they left their bag on the subway. I see them over there, right? They're not unforeign to us. So those kind of things. We've adapted the song Old MacDonald to being young Kathy had a farm, E-I-E-I-O, and on that farm they had a, because we don't, Kathy's 6 years old or 3 years old and hasn't told us their pronoun yet. So we, on that farm they had a, and we just go from there. You can play with songs. You can ask families to help you to adopt songs too. It's actually quite fun. And if you pull out a flip chart while they're helping you in circle time to adapt a song, you can come up with very clever ways and have some laughter while you're doing it. And also start to think about how gendered our world is and how we can unintentionally force our gender beliefs onto someone who hasn't yet decided what their gender expression is going to be. And you know, while we're thinking of that, we can also think about gender expansive language. For example, we can think about how often someone will say, oh, here comes a policeman, or here comes a fireman. Well, we all know that not all firefighters or firemen are men. We know that there are women who also fight fires. And now that we know about gender expressions, we know that many people fight fires, not just stereotypical genders. So let's be mindful and let's start using our gender expansive language, like firefighters, police officers, letter carriers, and let's start from modeling those things. If we are modeling them, then the children will also follow suit. They will know that we are using these. They'll start picking up on those words, you know, as well. Do you have any more questions?
Yeah, another question I have is, what can I do to help families in the LGBTQ2S community feel more welcomed right away?
Well, you know, right away I would really use name tags. I think that's a great right away. I mentioned the documentation, like the sign-in sheet. That is a great way of using a right away, because all EarlyON centers have to do some sort of signing in, and having the pronouns there I think would be tremendously helpful. Now I know we're going to be switching to a model of electronic signing in soon, and I don't know if those electronic signing in will have pronouns, but falling back on the name tags can always be a good thing. Now all EarlyON centers have families that seem to come more consistently. So those families who come more consistently, if they're willing and they've signed the media consent form, you can have their image on the wall with their pronoun and their first name only, and that way you're also doing fulfilling the requirements of how does learning happen, which is documenting what we do in the space. So and what we do in terms of learning with the children. So if the family is building blocks or learning or in a science area practicing how to make silly putty, and taking an image of that family, and they're willing to have their picture taken and they've signed the consent forms, you can then have their image of that activity and them on the wall and with their pronoun. that will make other families who are LGBTQ coming into that space feel, wow, you know, there's families like my family. There's families that look like my family. That lone parent will see another lone parent. That LGBTQ family will see another LGBTQ family. That BIPOC family will see another BIPOC family. And they'll feel more welcomed in that space. They'll feel like they belong in that space. And everybody wants a sense of belonging, right? I mentioned celebrating special days, but you know, it's simply having conversations with the families. Don't be afraid to have a time in your program where you're not programming, where the families are simply interacting with each other. They're simply there to socialize and talk to each other. That seems to happen very naturally around meal time or snack time. So I tend to have have just an announcement of what's happening for the rest of the program, what's happening for the month, if there's something special coming up, like if we're going on a field trip. Like, of course, all this happened pre-pandemic where we had field trips, right? I tend to have that opportunity where I'll tell the families about those things, and then I'll back off. I will let them have their time to interact with each other. And what you'll find is that because you've mentioned these things, there's now something else to talk about. If they don't have a connection with each other, it would be something like, oh, are you going to the zoo trip? Oh, I'm not sure, I've never been, or I want to go too. And all of a sudden there's something else to talk about, you know. It's great for people who don't know each other because now they have a topic that they can all talk about. Oh, are you going to the next potluck? Or if you don't have potlucks, are you going to the next parenting workshop, you know, things like that. So those kind of connections. But the most simplest thing you can do is know their names, learn their names. And it's hard because I remember there was 80 people in my circle, so learning their names was very hard. But learning something about them, something, you know, little so-and-so is going to school next year, or their grandfather is in town, or his grandparent is in town, grandparent, not grandfather, they're doing expansive language here, is in town, and we want to welcome them to the program, like, you know, inviting them to the program, things like that. Of course, things are going to change after the pandemic, where we may have to reduce our numbers. So inviting someone to the program might not be what we're able to do, but in some way showing that family that you are tapped into them enough to know that they have a guest, and the guest is important to them at their home, right? So those kind of things. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
That's fantastic. Any more questions?
Yeah. What can I do to help children who are expressing their gender identity feel more supported in the work that we do?
Oh, one of the ways that I think is the most helpful is for there should be a tone that's set, and that starts with the staff in the space, of course, that all the toys are for all the children. And you can say that when you're doing your orientations with the families. You can say that when you're doing circle time. I'm so glad that I saw everyone enjoying the dramatic center. I saw Kathy playing very nicely in the dramatic center. I saw Felix helping with the dramatic center. I saw Jonathan, who was also in the dramatic center, playing so nicely. Mentioning these things, and allowing the children to feel like all the toys are accessible to them, and it has no gender. The toys have no gender. The toys are gender fluid. They're for everyone, and that's important. And also having the adults mirror that. And it takes the staff to set that tone, because, you know, I've worked in places where a parent will come in and a parent will see their child all dressed up wearing all the most amazing, I call it fancy things, and the adult will be upset that the child is wearing all these fancy things, because they're raising that child to be very masculine, and they feel like these things are feminine in some manner. There is no masculine and feminine when it comes to toys. Toys are toys. Dressing up is dressing up. You know, it's a dress. You feel like wearing a beautiful dress, it's a beautiful dress. You feel like wearing a beautiful suit, it's a beautiful suit. So setting that tone is very important, and that takes a lot of work. It takes a team effort. All the staff need to be on board, and the families then follow suit, the adults, and then the children will definitely be interested in that too. And it has to be an expectation, you know. The expectation is that we're being nice to each other, and we are saying nice words to each other. I like Jose's dress, and I like Kathy's dress, and it's normal. It's not something unusual to see that everyone is enjoying what we have in the space. And of course, encourage people to call the children by the pronouns that they have chosen. We've learned through working with the 519, we're pretty fortunate that we are able to work with people from infancy to old age, and we've learned that we only need one person in our lives that's consistent to be positive and to be encouraging and affirming for us to feel supported. So if this space, this EarlyON space, is that for this child, then maybe we've done enough so this child who now reaches to be a teenager isn't contemplating suicide. You know, I'm often asked why I do this work. That's one of the reasons why I do this work, because I don't want that now young adolescent person to feel suicide, to feel like they need to contemplate suicide. I also want them to feel that they can handle the world and they can be themselves. You know, it's so important. I think I've answered that question quite thoroughly. Do you have any more questions for me?
Yes. What can I do to support families who are struggling with their child's gender expression?
Well, one of the things that families need to realize is that the child is not having any struggles. The child is expressing themselves exactly how a child should, you know, exploring their world and exploring the things around them. And that is what a child is supposed to do. So the struggle is not the child. The struggle is definitely the adult. And it often is the thought of the dream being lost. You know, the idea of I thought I was raising a girl, and now it's according to the gender expression my child is showing me and saying I'm raising a boy, and the dream was to have this little girl running around, but now I have this little boy running around. No, you have a little person running around, and you have a little person who is living their best life in the moment that they are in, dressing up and telling you all about how beautiful the world is in their own vision of the world. And I think that's so important. And what the adult can do is to connect with the 519, go on our website, see all the programs that we have, see all the work that we've done, see how vast our community is and how strong our community is. And this child who's expressing themselves is not alone and is not unique in the expression of their gender identity. They're not unique. There's many people who are living their lives expressing their gender identity. The other thing is to contact places like PFLAG. PFLAG has it's an organization that is for adults to come together and support each other when their children are expressing just that, their gender identity. It's also a great place to get resources and go to programs, and they are tremendously supportive. The other thing is to have your child come to some of the programs at the 519. We have programs from 0 to 6 years old, and we have programs that are for children 8 to, I believe, 8 to 12 years old, if I'm not mistaken. I don't run that program, but it's called CAS, Kids Action Art, and they get social justice through art, and they get to learn about themselves and zone in on their skills and their gifts through art. And I think that's just fantastic, and they get to hang out with their peers. So this is a great, there's a lot of things out there. The idea is to keep asking questions and keep plugging in as a parent. There's support for you, there's support for the children, and don't change your expectations for your children. No matter what their gender expressions may be, you expect them to do their homework. That shouldn't change based on how they're expressing themselves. You expect them to do piano lessons. That shouldn't change. You expect them to come home and do their chores. That shouldn't change. And love your children. Love your children. Express your love to your children. Say nice things. Do nice things for your children, and let them know that you're still there and you are still plugged into them. If you need a moment to go off into the corner and cry because you now have this amazing little person walking around in a dress that was not what you expected, go and do that cry. Do that away from the child. Do that away, the books just fell. Do that away from the child, and come back to the child with loving arms and a sense of, this is going to be amazing, in your tone, in your voice, in your body language, in your smile, everything. But I'm not saying I don't understand the loss of the dream. Of course I understand the loss of the dream. Everybody has dreams for their children, but your child has a more amazing journey that's going to be coming, and I think that in itself is special. So that's what I would do. I would reach out to all the resources that are available. I talk to my child's teacher when school opens, or if school becomes a virtual thing. Then I talk to my child's teacher and make sure my child's teacher is also affirming my child. The adults in the child's life can create a wider circle of support for that child, and that circle of support can start with the school, can start with friends, it can start with neighbors. You have to be the advocate for your child. You have to be the one that stands up and says, to whomever, that this is my child, and I love them as they are. And today, because it may change tomorrow, it might be a different pronoun. Today they want to be called, and whatever they want to be called, you say it and you affirm that you may be doing this affirming, and you may be doing this advocacy to your family members. You might have to start thinking about how many times are you going to let uncle, I'm going to say uncle, but in the queer community we also say spunkle. How many times you're going to let them call your child a name that they don't want to be called? And you may be having to make a decision, and say what that decision is to that family member, to support your child and to affirm your child. But yes, that's what I would do. I would definitely do those things. Sorry, was that clear?
Yeah, very clear.
Excellent. Do you have another question?
Yes. How can I empower them to advocate for themselves in various systems that they're accessing?
Wonderful. You mean the adult, right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I told you about the school system. In the school system, you know, that you have a great connection with the teacher, your child's direct teacher that you can speak to. Always introduce yourself. Always give some sort of understanding of your child's pronouns, and say these things to the teacher not as a novelty, but as this is a matter of fact. This is quote unquote normal. This is my expectations of you as a teacher, is to address my child by the pronoun that they've chosen, and also for you to support my child. You know, setting the tone in the room. We can set the tone in the room as working with younger kids. Teachers working with older children can also set the tone. At your doctor's office, set the tone. Say this: the receptionist, the person who is doing any sort of intake. Those people can also start using the child's pronouns and start addressing your child in a way that is respectful and affirming. The other thing is to know your rights. It's important that you know your rights and that your child knows your rights, their rights at the school. And it's everyone gets to play with the toys. That's a right that a child can totally understand. Everyone is supposed to be treated with respect. That's another right that a child can totally understand. And if something is not right, if the child is feeling like they're not being treated fairly by their friends, bullying, name calling, being shunned or shamed, they need to know that it's okay to tell the adult in the room. And if the adult in the room is a teacher, tell the teacher. If the adult in the room is an early childhood educator, tell that early childhood educator. Tell both of them, and then come home and tell you. Your home should be where your child can tell you anything that's bothering them, and then you are going to speak to the adult that has supervision over your child during the daytime when you are not having supervision over your child because you're at work. And there should be understanding that this is how you're going to handle your child's needs to that system, whatever that system is, whether it be the educational system, the medical system, any systems that your child is involved in, any activity, if it's after school activities, soccer, tennis, whatever those activities are. This should be an ongoing theme that you will be available to address any concerns that your child has and any needs that your child has with the adults that are in these spaces. You notice I keep saying the adult.
Yeah.
Instead of you going to a child who is speaking shamefully to your child, you will go to the adult. Because if you're standing in front of a child and you're talking to the child and the child doesn't know you, and you're telling this child what you want them to do, even if you're telling them nicely, they don't know you, so it's almost an authoritative expression. It's not necessarily going to make a difference. But if it's coming from a person who knows that child well, it would make more of a difference, you know. Also, you want the child to see you deal with the adult. You want the child to see you speaking to an adult, and you want the adult that belongs to the child who may be speaking making your child feel uncomfortable, to then speak to that child who's making your child feel uncomfortable. There might be situations where you have to speak up because your child might be in physical danger, but if there's times where there is no physical danger, then you can speak to the adult instead of the child that's causing the concern. And if you as a parent is feeling like you're not getting anywhere with the system, there's always people within the system that you can speak to. The principal, the manager of whatever sports place that you're using, the doctor's office. You can speak to the doctor, or you can speak to the medical board. There's always another level that you can go ahead and speak to someone. That's what I say, know your rights.
What if I have colleagues who feel encouraging affirmation of gender expressions is wrong and don't want to do that type of work, thinking it's not necessary?
Well, the thing about that is, as as people working in the EarlyON field, I was almost going to say early child educators, but not everybody working in EarlyON is an early child educator. There are other people that work there. But as people working in the early years field, we have certain things that are governing our practices, our best practices, and our standards of practice. And one of them is, how does learning happen? The pedagogy, Ontario's early years pedagogy. And it talks about making families feel welcome, making them feel like they belong, making sure that they're able to express themselves, making sure that they feel engaged. And then of course we have the policies and procedures from our different agencies that we work for, whether it be the City of Toronto, whether it be the 519. There's so many things that govern what we do when we're working with young families, and that it's expected that we do this work. It's part of our job to do this work. If you're working in an EarlyON center, then you have the standard of practice that you have to follow. Then you also have, if you're an early child educator, you have the code of conduct that you have to follow. If you're working in a daycare, you have the Early Learning Act that you have to follow. So it's expected as being a part of our work, and in those individual documents that I've mentioned, it all starts with engaging families. It all starts with making everybody feel included and welcomed and affirmed. So I'm not taking you away from what you're expected to do and what is part of your work. All I'm asking for is for you to be more mindful in what you're doing and how you're doing it, so that families are getting the best of the program. So in terms of what the persons it says they're already doing, yes, I agree. You are already doing the work. You are. Every one of us is already doing the work. But if we were doing the work as well as it can be done, then we wouldn't have queer families not feeling comfortable in our space. Remember, the survey went out and the queer families were saying they didn't feel comfortable in our space. And a lot of queer families are not identifying themselves when they come to our space. A lot of BIPOC people are not feeling comfortable in our space. Black, Indigenous, people of color, a lot of them are not feeling comfortable in our spaces. Why? Ask yourself why. Why do they not feel comfortable? Why do queer families not want to identify themselves when they come to our space? Is it because they are feeling the sense like somebody will judge them unfairly? Is it that they feel like they're not safe? Is it that they feel like there's nothing in the space that resembles them, so therefore they know they need to not say who they are? So I agree. We are doing the work, but we could do the work better. There's always room for improvement. There's always room for professional development. And for that person who is feeling that it's wrong, that is a moral dilemma that they'll have to deal with on their own. All I can really speak to is the professional lens that they're supposed to bring to the field every day. And that moral dilemma might be where, like, you know, I don't believe in smoking, right? But if there is somebody who is smoking, I'm not going to shun them or make them feel uncomfortable with their smoking. I'm just going to please ask them that they don't smoke inside the space because it's a bylaw, right? That you don't smoke in the building. So they may have to learn to deal with those concerns on their own. But in terms of the work, that's an expectation of the work. And Glitterbug is the mobile program at the 519 through the EarlyON program. We're more than willing to support that staff, support that team in any way that we can, whether it be through virtual workshops or through one-on-one coaching. We're more than willing to do that. All right. What do you feel about that?
I feel it makes a lot of sense. It's I can do what I can do as my own person.
Mm-hmm.
And I respect how other people feel. But in a job environment, you have to do what is of your job.
I agree. I really appreciate you calling in, and I know some of these questions might be, questions that other people may feel, everybody should have already know the answer to, or they may feel, oh, this is new to me. I'm really glad that you were the one that was courageous enough to ask them, and that there's no such thing as a silly question, and we could work through answering these questions for other people. It's a really great idea that you called in. Thank you.
Thank you for answering my questions.